Welcome to It's a Woman's World, a show which discusses any and all topics under the sun from a woman's point of view. Hosted today by Junita Cathey, and here's Junita.
Welcome to It's a Woman's World. My name is Junita Cathey, and I'm thrilled to be joined today with my co-host, Nadia Giordana. How are you?
Good. Happy to be here.
Great. And Naava Johnson.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
We have Miss Uma Janga.
Hello, great to be here, Junita.
Good to see you. And we have our special guest today, Kenya McKnight. Welcome.
Thank you.
Kenya is the founder of the Black Women's Business Alliance. She is also a 2012 Bush Fellow, and we're thrilled to have you join our show today. Kenya, tell me a little about the Black Women's Business Alliance. You're the founder. How did you get that started, and what does the group do?
Yeah, so it's kind of like my post-Bush Fellow project. But so basically, I spent 4 months in Oakland at Policy Link with my fellowship, and I began to look at some trends with Black women in our economic status seem to be declining. And so in that, I began to search in Minnesota also, and just across the country for organizations or associations that focused on Black women advancing in business. And I didn't find that. What I found is that Black women over the last maybe 20 years is responsible for more than about 270% of new business starts in America.
Wow.
And so there's some strong entrepreneurial energy, but then I found that we're getting probably less than 1% of federal procurement contracts, and we're still not making enough money. We're just like at the bottom when it comes to median income, you know. So we're nationally pretty poor, but we make things look great, right? That's been our history. And so in Minnesota, I began to look at some trends and see that Black women in Minnesota, which we can talk about another time really in more detail, but pretty much Black women in Minnesota have a higher poverty rate than Black women nationally, nearly 11%. 11% higher poverty rate in Minnesota than nationally. And Black women in Minnesota also make up about 77% of not single-headed household, but primary income generators, right? Like they're the primary breadwinners.
Wow.
And I thought, and I'm going, wow, we're really struggling. And the average income, according to the Minnesota Women's Foundation report from 2013, the average median income for a single one Black mother with 2 children is like $14,000, a little about 14.5 thousand a year. And I'm going,
What year?
For a whole family.
yeah, right? But the average, the median income for Black people in Minnesota is only about 29,000, right? But it costs nearly 38,000 for one child and one adult to live in Minnesota. Like that's the average cost of living. And I'm going, we are starting from a serious deficit, right? And so, and we have this national entrepreneurial energy, but what we don't always have is a clear pathway as to what it takes to become an entrepreneur, resources, relationships, contracts, those sort of things. Now, I worked in the business sector for 5 years, helping people start new businesses, so kind of knew some things in my political policy background, knew a lot of people and quite a bit about the economic development sector. And what I know about it the most is that we're not really in it, right? And the pathway we go through is about a lot of debt financing.
How
and
interesting.
so while the Black Women's Business Alliance is so who and what we are, so I got a group of women together, about 20 of us, and we kind of went through this 6-month process of, I guess, community-based research where we began to explore and discuss our financial situations, you know, from our education levels to our financial skill sets, to our current assets, to our current income, our aspirations, and it was a mismatch, right? The education, the income level, the skill, and the family size didn't match our aspirations, right? Like they were greater than what we had the capacity to really do. So the Black Women's Business Alliance was formed out of that. And it is a collaboration of Black women, business owners, who are all coming together to help each other become successful by providing each other with business support. So some of us are already kind of like, business owners, and the others were new. So maybe like 10 of us were existing business owners and the others were not. So we're sharing our skills, resources, and relationships among each other to help us be successful.
What a great way to take such devastating statistics and organize around it and create a solution starting somewhere so that we can begin to change the script, because it's very discouraging as a Black woman to hear that there's such a gap in what Black women are earning in just our state and how it compares nationally.
They're surprising numbers. And Kenya, you were recently on is it the Women's Economic Summit? Can you tell us a little bit about your role there?
Yes. So the Black Women's Business Alliance, and we call it BWBA for short. Again, out of, the situation of, the numbers, and it was very discouraging. And so here was an opportunity for us to attach ourselves to a larger women economic movement. And so we inserted ourselves in the process and made sure that we represented the interests and perspective of Black women. And in that, we connected with other women of color. So we connected with women from the Native American or American Indian, from the Somali, from the Latino, and from the Liberian community. And we all came together and put on a panel called the Indigenous, Immigrant, and Women of Color. And our goal was to talk about our contributions to the Minnesota tax base, but just to the culture, fiber of Minnesota as women of color since we've been here, and our experience and in our cultural realities and our aspirations as women. And we invited Caucasian women to join us as allies, as partners, to help us advance ourselves economically in the larger picture of women moving forward. And so that was our panel. And so I participated in that. And then I also was a panelist for the transportation panel, which a lot of my policy and community work over the past 3 years has been about regional planning, transportation. So I sit on the Transportation Advisory Board as a Met Council appointee. It's pretty much a resource, it's a pot of money that Met Council kind of governs and manages for transportation projects. So
why this transportation? That's what I still didn't really get that.
Why transportation?
Yes.
Why?
Is there a link?
I don't know how I got here.
I know, that's what I want to know. What is this? Because there's so many segments out there, sectors out there that we can focus on. Why is it that you are focused on transportation here?
Sure. Well, it is, from what I've been learning over these past 4 years really working in this area, is that it is the biggest economic development tool.
And it was an accomplishment to get on that board, was it
Oh,
not?
huge.
Yeah.
I am the first African American to ever sit on that board.
So that's important in itself.
Oh, gosh, the board is 39 years old, I'm 38, right?
Yeah.
On one end, it's like, oh, that's terrible, right? Like that hasn't happened.
Yeah.
And then on the other end, it goes, well, it's great that it happened, because now, I get to be a voice, not just for African American people, but I get to be a voice for underrepresented communities across the region. Be it that they are seniors, right? Be it that there are disabled communities, our youth. I get to bring these real life issues that I'm aware of from my allies and from other folks to this conversation, where people at one point was deciding about how nearly $900 million of federal dollars will be allocated throughout the region for transportation projects. It's now down to about 150 million after a lot of cuts over the past few years, but it's still a significant amount of money that goes into funding things like the MinPass system in our highway. So like the airport, we funded the renovation of the security system, the electric car charging stations at the Mall of America, we funded that, and even some in down. So it's a variety of different projects, from bridges to roads to light rails to bus that this fund can fund.
Going back to her question, so what exactly is the link, like, between transportation and progressing business ownership for Black businesses? progressing those
So
success?
the direct connection between transportation and, for me, transportation is central to life.
Okay.
It is a system by which all things move. And without it, none of us could even gotten here today. And so it's really important. It's how our society has progressed by going from dirt roads to concrete to, but it is also a major tool that our government uses for economic development. So you notice when there's a big renovation to a bus corridor, let's say Lake Street. Let's take Lake Street. Let's take Central Corridor because that's already done, and St. Paul, right? The university. And so because of the light rail development, everything around it was enhanced, right? I mean, you see new businesses, you see, even new they have bus routes, they have, the bus routes run differently, but there's a completely different economic development atmosphere there, right? With new businesses, homes, all that. We see that happening. And that is the benefit of what transportation can bring. So that's considered. And so when you think about it, you think about Southwest, you think about the Southdale Mall, think that, well, it's a huge transportation hub, right? That the mall was kind of built around, right? And so, at any rate, it's a tool that really brings about economic benefit in the form of business, housing, landscape, increasing the the streetscape. And communities of colors have not always benefited from that. In fact, they've been more disenfranchised from it, where it has removed them from their homes rather than enhancing their environment. So the connection to it is that it's moving. And in this state, a lot of projects are happening directly in our communities. And so we have two choices, right? We can be disadvantaged by it, or we can be advantaged by it. And both will depend on our participation and awareness of it and connectivity to the planning, to understanding what it is, but also the planning processes and helping to shape the outcomes. And so the connection is, I hope that's a little bit clear, is the opportunity that we can get from it, and we use it, we need it.
I think a lot of times, in just my own little limited information, when I think about transportation barriers, a lot of times I think about greater Minnesota, right? Because it's
Right.
not as,
Yes,
vibrant,
definitely.
and there's not as
New
much
Jersey.
retail, and just all the things that we have in the Twin Cities. You don't have access to those same things in greater Minnesota, so you can understand, public transportation is not going to be as accessible. But when you tell me a statistic that the average median income is $14,000 for a black woman and one child, or two children, I'm thinking that's probably a job in retail or fast food or something that's open 7 days a week. And then now I'm thinking, well, transportation is pretty accessible during the week in the Twin Cities, but when you get to Sundays or Saturdays, because if I'm working retail or if I'm working in a restaurant or something, I'm probably working some Saturdays and some Sundays. And now
Bingo.
you've just impacted my ability to consider that job option or to make all of my shifts,
Yes.
which then builds a pretty good track record, because I can't get to work on Sunday because the bus now only runs once every hour, or I have to walk 3 miles to get to the bus stop that runs more regularly. So now that you say that, I see a connection and not just the greater Minnesota issue.
Oh, sure. If I can say that, so there's many connections to it, and that is definitely a key one. And I grew up in North Minneapolis for the past 30 years. I now live in North Loop. I can tell you it's really different. It's like the access, right, is so different. Not just because things are there, but it's about the accessibility, right? So places like North Minneapolis really and truly is on an island. It's not really connected to the regional system. You think because buses are running there that but you can't really get around to where the real jobs are, right?
Okay.
And so that's in the suburban areas, right? Like we think about the Southwest Light Rail. They're going to have one of the biggest job creations that come out of this light rail development, right? Well, there's currently not a bus or train that you can take, or bus you can take from North Minneapolis that will get you there. Okay, you have to go downtown and then go to Southdale Mall, and then maybe there's some connecting buses there that really don't exist right now. However, the idea will be to create them. So the connectivity is huge, and people's ability to get to work is huge, and that's a huge disconnection between communities of colors and opportunities. And so the transportation system being built out in a way that's connected, that connects people to opportunity and places, rather it be for jobs, school, because the idea is to create a region of choice.
Definitely. But
No matter where you live, right? You still, you will be able to choose a good quality of life.
You know, and
That's what we don't have.
as we sort of wrap our show up today, a couple of things. One, I know, thank you for
We're done already?
for serving on the Met Council board, right? For
Yes,
being
yes,
representative
yes.
in communities that tend to be underrepresented in making decisions when it comes to how our transportation system runs. So thank you for that. If someone watching today wanted to get more information on how they can have a voice in transportation development in the Twin Cities area, is there a way they can connect? And if someone wanted to get involved or learn more about the Black Women's Business Alliance, is there a website or way they can connect with you?
Sure, I would say that it's really complicated, and I know we're running out of so much time. But with Met Council is our MPO, our state metropolitan planning organization that's federally required to exist. You can check out their website. They're responsible for creating a regional economic development plan and determining pretty much the blueprint for how the 7 counties that they govern, or for the most part, are supposed to look in housing, sewer, water, all of that, right? And even population size. So you can always check out their website, all the different things that they have for housing, transportation, respond to it. There's a lot of public open processes. Just get involved, sign up, and just call your Met Council member and ask them questions. And so for the Black Women Business Alliance, we are a public benefit corporation. We're a private company. And so it's not necessarily open. Stay tuned. We are launching this June, so we'll be more accessible to the public in terms of being able to get our resources. But right now, we're kind of still internal,
Okay.
Building our virtual system that people will be able to benefit from.
Thank you so much, Kenya, for just shedding some light on women in transportation and how that impacts their ability to increase their earning potential. Maybe you'll consider coming back and joining us once the Black Women's Business Alliance kind of gets to the next stage, and talking a little bit about that and how just the impact that you plan to have and that you are having. We'd love to have you back.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if I can close and say on my behalf, in terms of, I mean, we also have to remember that women, especially in communities of colors, are most likely the primary breadwinners, but also we have a large single mother population that continues to increase, and they use public transportation a lot. And so oftentimes we don't have amenities to accommodate families on the buses from the bus stops, the buses themselves and all of that. And so it's about pushing for a more inclusive society that also accommodates families, and women.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so that's my spill.
Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate it, and I've learned a lot today from your presentation and your information. And thank you for joining us. Next up, we'll have
A spontaneous discussion.
Hi, welcome back to the show. I'm Dr. Susan Strauss, and we're going to have a panel discussion of a question we don't even know about yet. More on that later. And with me is Uma Janga.
Hi.
Hi, Uma. Glad you're joining us again. Nadia, Giordana. Hello, Nadia.
Happy to be here.
And we've got Junita Cathey.
hello, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
Good.
You're looking good. And a special person today that isn't usually on is Paula Meyers. Hi, Paula.
Hi, Susan. Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're glad you're here. Now, here's the deal. Back in the day when the show just began, the producer would think, let's just have some fun and pose a question where the panel didn't know what the question was and discuss it. He thought that was fun to put us on the spot. Well, he decided he wanted to do that today. So we have a question here that none of the 5 of us have seen that we will be discussing. Drum roll, please. Oh my goodness, he did a good one. It's what needs to change? What needs to change?
You mean with the whole world?
It doesn't say. It's just what needs to change. Whoa, is that loaded or what?
Oh, my.
That makes me think of be the change you want to see in the world.
Oh,
So
yes.
the first thing
Ooh.
is we need to change. That's a good place to start.
Oh, that's an introspective philosophical viewpoint. Good
Who wants
for
to look
you.
at themselves?
That's what, actually, that's what Mahatma Gandhi has said. If you want to see the
Yeah,
change,
he's
you
the one,
first.
Yeah, you be the change
Be
you
the
want
change
to
you
see.
wanna see.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right.
That's a very good
Well,
point.
that's good.
You know,
What
I
else?
think that topic of what needs to change ties into our show that we did on routine versus spontaneity. You know, if you're a person that strives with routine, is there anything about that that needs to change? Do we need to be more flexible in what we do and how we view life? I know personally, every single day I have a goal of trying to look at the positive, and we have all these cliche sayings that we all live by or that we see on Pinterest, on social media. But, you know, when you go through life and you get older and you're responsible for children and just living your life, those things start to become real. And so I wake up every day and try to look at what's really working and try to celebrate that. So maybe starting with our mindset needs to change in how we view the world.
Definitely, me too. With me, you know, I'm brought up in a culture like very conservative culture. Every day here, as I see my daughter grow up and growing up in a very different community, I'm like, oh my God, I have to change my mind to like, okay, this is the culture here. She has to get used to it, and we should not force her to be like us. You know what I mean?
yes.
It's so hard. It's very
Yes,
hard.
yes,
Trust me.
yes.
Because you know, in India, it's arranged marriages and everything. It's so much different from here. Now my daughter is a teenager. She has already started dating and everything. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not done that, and it's so new
Wow.
to me. I have to see everything from a new perspective. So it's like totally a new thing to me. I cannot even tell you how much it's impacting me.
So it
like
sounds-
every day, sometimes I feel like, is this the way I should let her go, or should I say this is not who we are? You know what I mean?
Well, it sounds like you're kind of struggling with two changes.
Yes.
One, your own mindset.
Yes.
But the other change of
practical
living
thing.
in a different culture and changing your beliefs then about how do I raise my daughter,
Oh, my.
thinking about my Indian culture and then
Yes.
American culture.
It's very hard, trust me. It's
I would
very,
think it would
very
be.
hard. So I don't know how to tell you. Even if I tell her, it doesn't make any sense because she is growing up here. She will say,
Yes.
Mom, it doesn't make any sense.
You know, I think that's how we grow, and that's really a sign of love because everybody, regardless of if you're a bicultural family or if you were born in this country and you're raising your kids in this country, you're still challenged with how you were raised, how
Yes,
you grew up.
that's true.
And every generation is a little bit more advanced.
Oh.
You know, my daughter just got a cell phone. And, you know, I'm like, I want to be able to allow her to grow up and not micromanage, but I have responsibilities as a parent
Yes.
to care, to
Exactly.
check, you know, to do audits. But how do I balance that when I'm still struggling? Like, is this appropriate? Do I allow her to have it? And so it is, but I think that's a sign of love and growth when we allow them that freedom. But, you know, while we're still struggling internally,
Yes.
but we still hold that accountability or those measures in place so that we're kind of on the same page, or at least we have an understanding. We may never be on the same page.
I know.
You know, when it comes to dating, you may think, I'm still not comfortable with it, but you have an understanding, so you allow her to be her. And
Yes.
And even some of that is generational too. My mom is going to be 90 next month, and we were talking about the social mores these days, about people living together and not being married. And of course, my mother is just, oh, that just shouldn't be happening. I don't understand that. And so she's 90. Well, I've got different feelings about that. And then my children who are in their 40s, I mean, it's just gotten to be very much the norm now that people live together when they're not married. So that generation plays a role.
that's
And,
very
you know,
true.
I grew up in the 60s, and I was in high school in the early 60s, and it was, do you kiss on the first date? And now it's something totally different with all of
my
that.
daughter will never kiss, so.
Yeah.
And then there's the change that's thrust upon us, and how do we handle that so that the change doesn't go in such a negative way? Because
Yes.
change happens in our lives that sneaks up behind us, and then what do? How do we handle that change and channel it so that it is at least as positive as it can be if it's a negative change?
Yeah, it's the only thing we're sure about. What do you think, Paula?
It's a very good topic, and to be honest, what I thought of was, I need to change my toothbrush. So it was not very as encompassing as yours. But definitely, when you talk about changing attitudes, that's definitely something that anybody can work on, right? Anybody can work on their own attitude. I love the fact, be the change you want to see in the world. I know that sometimes when people are looking at something, they think, oh, I don't want to do that. And if I can just get them to change their attitude to, okay, I'll get this done and then I'll move on.
The attitude.
It's your attitude.
Change your
Yeah,
attitude.
it's your whole thinking.
Yeah.
But I think you bring up an interesting point because it's also change of these little things. I need to change. I need to get a new toothbrush.
Things we don't get to all the time because they're kind of mundane. But
Yes, but it is there. Were you going to say something else? I might have interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Just, and the fact that even if I'm attacking something with a good attitude versus a bad attitude, and I've found even just putting a smile on my face to do something that I don't want to do changes my attitude completely and helps me get through it.
I think I've read
Easier.
some research about that if you put a smile on your face, it changes some of the neurotransmitters in your brain, and you start to feel more positive, even if it's something you didn't want to do. But there's actually a physiological change. I don't remember who the study was by, but that rings a bell when you mentioned that.
yeah, it does with me too.
And going back to changing your toothbrush, I think, but I mean, that speaks to the practicality in life. Sometimes if we change or tweak some of the small things, some of those big things won't seem so far out or so big because we've sort of slowly progressed our way. We become comfortable with change with something small, like a toothbrush, like, your filter in your refrigerator.
Organizing your closet,
Yes.
cleaning your house.
Yes.
All of those
Here's
things.
something else I always think about is that when something is irritating you or something's unpleasant in your life, why not change it if it's within your power? I always liken it to walking with a small pebble in your shoe. It's there. You can keep walking with it in your shoe. It's irritating, but it's not debilitating. But as soon as you take the, 20 seconds to stop and get that pebble out of your shoe, your walking is so much easier. Your attitude is so much better. So instead of complaining about something or just suffering through it, if you can change it, why not?
But if it involves people around you, then you have to be careful too. You're not
Yes.
hurting anybody
Yes,
else.
that's right.
Yeah.
See, if it
Right.
just pertains to you, then it's okay.
Right.
But if it involves around people around you, then you have to make sure you're not hurting and you're making sure you're doing your responsibilities as well as, it matters. That's where
Things
the-
get complicated.
Yes.
They do, and when you bring up the stone in the shoe, it can be, sort of a metaphor for some of our relationships and how long might we stay in a marriage, for example. When we're not happy in a marriage, it's sort of that pebble that's there, but it's much more than just stopping for 20 seconds to remove the stone. It
And other
impacts
people are involved.
everybody's
Yes.
involved, it's money, it's court, it's pain, it hurts so bad. So change is difficult. It'd be nice if it was as easy as a pebble in the shoe, wouldn't it?
Right, yeah.
Well, we had a chat about change, didn't we? And what needs to change. And you saw where we're at. Where are you at with what needs to change? This is one more segment for It's a Woman's World. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.